Students, welcome to another Mr. Ness screencast. Today's aim is Intro to the Progressive Era. And here are your objectives. Please pause the video, look these questions over, and get ready to copy some vocab terms and take some notes. So we're starting a new semester today, and you should have ended the last semester by learning about a period called the Gilded Age. This was the period right after the Civil War, and it was characterized by rapid industrial growth. That means that there was a lot of factories and a lot of business, increased immigration, mostly from Southern and Eastern Europe, government policies that favored business, and a large gap between the rich and the poor. That means that there were a few extremely wealthy people and a lot of very poor people. We're going to be looking at some problems of this time, and the reason is because in this unit, the Progressive Era, we're going to focus on the solutions that people offered to the problems of the Gilded Age. I'm going to put these problems into two categories. The first is laissez-faire economics. That means that the government did not make any rules for businesses. And the second one is lack of democracy, people's inability to express themselves in government. All right, let's start with laissez-faire economics and look at some of the problems. The first one is the existence of what are called trusts or monopolies. And a monopoly is a business that controls the entire supply of something so that there is no competition. There's no one else in business selling this product. And that means that the prices are usually higher for consumers. Another problem was destruction of the environment by businesses who would do things like buy up land and cut down entire forests or dump toxic chemicals into rivers and lakes and oceans. And the last problem is exploitation of workers, which means that business owners were treating their workers unfairly. Remember, there were no laws telling businesses what they could do, so they did whatever it took to make money. Child labor was common, and the workers worked for low pay, long hours, and in very dangerous working conditions. And that is exemplified by the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire in 1911 because of a lack of safety precautions. The last problem related to laissez-faire economics is the dangerous living conditions for poor people who lived in cities at this time, most of whom were immigrants. And you might remember learning about these really crowded buildings that they lived in called tenements. All right, now let's look at problems associated with a lack of democracy. Democracy is the ability to vote. And we're going to look at some ways that people's voices were not being heard at this time. The first problem is corruption. That means that wealthy people paid off politicians to pass laws that they wanted. And that meant that people who voted were not having their voices heard because the politicians actually listened to the rich people. The second issue with democracy was that in the South, black men were unable to vote. The Gilded Age overlaps with the end of Reconstruction and the beginning of Jim Crow, and that's when African American men had their 15th Amendment rights taken away by different means, including intimidation by groups like the KKK. And the last problem associated with the lack of democracy is that women could not vote in most states. So we have people who vote, but their voices are not heard because the politicians only listen to rich people. And then we have two groups in society who could not vote at all. We're going to focus in this unit on the Progressive Era. That's the period that came after the Gilded Age, and that's when people tried to fix all the problems that I just talked about. This is the period in US history from about 1890 to 1920, and it's characterized by widespread reform. And reform means to change for the better or to improve. So during the Progressive Era, many people in the US tried to change the problems that had existed during the Gilded Age. We can think of the Gilded Age and the Progressive Era as having a cause and effect relationship. The Gilded Age was the cause because society had many problems. The effect was that people got fed up and they wanted to fix those problems. Those reformers proposed solutions to address the issues of the Gilded Age, and when they did so, we call that period the Progressive Era. An important thing that happened during the Progressive Era is that the role of government changed in American society. This is important. In the Gilded Age, most people believed in laissez-faire. That means that the government should not tell businesses what to do. However, during the Progressive Era, more and more people began to believe that the government should regulate businesses in order to address social problems. Businesses were seen to be the cause of some problems, and government or government action was seen to be the solution. In this unit, you're going to look at many of the reformers and the things that they proposed in order to address the problems that you learned about during the Gilded Age. All right, now it's time to review the objectives. If you don't know any of them, just rewind the video and look again. Be sure that you took notes on your vocab sheet. And I will see you in class. Bye, students.